Hi and welcome to episode 3 of Something Blue, the Boutique Blu-ray Interesting Cinema collab podcast that seeks to explore interesting films and cinema that we have around the world. If you don't know me, my name is Chris Moore. I'm hosting this podcast and I have another very special guest today. A man that has probably been responsible for most of the holes in my bank balance over a prolonged period of time. How you doing, Elliot?
Yeah, good. And I'm sorry for the damage to your bank balance.
It's all mutual, as you know.
I mean, to be fair, you have caused some damage to my bank balance as well.
Exactly
It's not a one-way thing.
Yeah, exactly right. We all kind of feed into each other's kind of little collecting, but more here's an interesting film, which is always the really dynamite words that I want. I don't want to even hear good film, brilliant film. It's all there's something really quirky and weird about this, and you're like, oh, that's exactly what we want. And I have to say, through the virtues show, the movie that you've brought this week, it falls slap bang in the middle of that, which I'm sure we'll get to in due course.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So we'll start with what we've been. Yeah, I am indeed. That's a very interesting movie. So we'll start with what we've been watching, or something old. So the rabbit holes have been walking down recently, or the films that have been interesting. You haven't shared on another platform, or maybe you have. I don't know. What have you got, Elliot? What's been floating your boat?
Oh, where do I start? Because, like I said to you, I've made a big pile here. So let's see. Okay, I'm going to talk about a classic, which I don't think I've talked about much on the internet before. Dr. Strangelove. So I rewatched this on the 4K. I've seen it many times, but my brother had never seen it, so he was kind of curious what it's all about. And I think I enjoyed it more than him, but he also did really appreciate all of the great filmmaking and set design, cinematography, and all. It is a brilliantly made film.
I sort of sit with your brother a bit on it, because I just feel it's one of those films that I'll watch one time and totally fall in love with, rather than appreciate. You know what I mean? But comedy, I suppose, is sort of sometimes I'm not in the right mood for in the same way, especially the type of comedy that's in Doctor Strangelove.
Yeah, for me, it has been an incremental kind of appreciation over different viewings. Actually, first time I saw it, I just didn't get it at all. I think I was expecting like a laugh out loud, laugh a minute kind of film, and it's not that. But it is just
not one-liner after one-liner. Yeah.
No. But it's bizarre. It's like the characters in it are so strong. Obviously, Peter Sellers is playing 3 different characters, and just brilliant filmmaking. And I think actually part of the reason that we decided to watch it was because we were talking about Oppenheimer and the bomb, and obviously Dr. Strangelove, and I want to show my brother Failsafe, the Sidney Lumet film.
Yes, Sidney Lumet, yeah.
Which is basically the same story but told seriously.
So if your brother ends up becoming like this conspiracy theorist and all that kind of stuff, is obsessed that we're going to end, and you'll say, I wonder how that happened, we'll be able to pinpoint it quite exactly.
Exactly,
It started with Stanley Kubrick. It was exactly as Kubrick intended.
Yeah.
So it's not your favourite Kubrick, obviously.
No.
But where does it sort of rank for you in Kubrick's?
Before I would have said probably towards the middle, but actually on this rewatch, it has risen. So
that's interesting.
It's probably top five Kubrick. But then there's so much competition. It's just such a good filmography.
For a man that didn't really make bad movies, it's. If you say bottom half Kubrick, you're still talking about a great film, probably.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I put Clockwork Orange in the bottom half, which I know many people love.
So yeah,
and actually I love. It's a great film, but it's in my bottom half just because of how strong the top half is.
Yeah, it's Clockwork Orange. Without going into it, is basically a nihilistic movie. And nihilism is just something I just struggle with in cinema. Like, I don't know, even though Pick for Radiance that time was an nihilistic film, but in general it rubs me up the wrong way.
I'm the same.
But again,
I think it's because maybe I'm not a nihilist in real life, but I think, I kind of think about, existential philosophy and serious stuff that when I watch a film, I don't necessarily want that. I want something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes the film is the escape from all of that you want to. I don't want to think about things too seriously. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Cool first choice. And a 4K as well,
I know.
Right on brand, Elliot.
Yeah.
That's just a studio release, isn't it? That one that
yeah,
4K?
This is because I know that this was in the big Columbia Classics box set, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which I never got, and I'm kicking myself because they still haven't released Lawrence of Arabia separately, and
That's
I
right.
just don't have
Gandhi,
it, and I want
think.
it. Yeah,
I think Gandhi is Gandhi got a separate 4K. I don't think so. I think it was just in that box as well.
yeah. So yeah, kicking myself.
Yeah. Of course, you could get it if you're willing to pay. It's either that or another kidney. It's like a toss-up. Which one you would want?
Yeah, but the thing is, as soon as I buy it, they will just announce the separate re-release, and I will want to die.
Absolutely. What happened here? But you'll have that like folded out because those Columbia Classic boxes are actually really pretty if you unpack them, and the way that they put together. So the book and all that's in it.
Indeed.
Still only got one of them, and I suspect I shall stick that way because they are an expensive hobby. Those Columbia Classics box sets, but very nice indeed. What else? What else have you got?
Let's see. Right, last night my viewing was this one, Lost Highway, the 4K from Criterion.
Right.
And I'd never seen this before in full. I'd seen elements of it, and to be honest, I'm still none the wiser on what the film is about. But I think...
Did you enjoy it, though?
I did enjoy it. And I think with David Lynch, it's definitely more about how you feel rather than what you think the film is about. Because there is stuff in there that is quite horrifying and just horrifying images.
Lynch, I think I've said this before, he's a funny director for me because sometimes you come away from his films going, I completely understood that, and then somebody asks you, well, what was it about? And you're like, well, it's about stuff. I can't exactly pinpoint exactly what it is, but on a moment-to-moment basis, scene to scene, you kind of go, okay, get what's happening in that scene. But actually, it's the sticking it all together that you kind of go, I'm maybe a bit hazy in that, and maybe that's the special connective David Lynch juice, isn't it?
It is, but then he goes and makes a film like The Straight Story, which is my favourite. And I'm like, why can't you make a few more of these? I want some more of this.
Yeah, it's funny that his experimental film is the only one with a straighter narrative.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
which I think is pretty good. I like Lost Highway a lot. In fact, I know I sort of like the Balthazar Getty part better, the second half of the movie.
Yeah,
maybe because I think it goes a bit more strange. That apparently that's an unpopular opinion, but I just felt that I seen the casting a little less in the second half, or certainly the interesting weird parts of it that maybe I was looking for Lynchian movies only happened there. But it's a fun movie.
I love that scene in the first half at the party when he's speaking to the weird man, and he's on the phone to him, and he's answering back on the phone when he's right there. That kind of stuff is to use the word Lynchian.
Yeah, indeed. It's stuff that sort of it is surrealist in some ways because it's your brain's saying this isn't necessary or shouldn't necessarily be happening, whereas we're kind of looking at it from maybe an entertainment point of view and going, that's clever, or there's something novel in that. That's interesting. Right. Well, I'll go next for one. I'll actually start with a showstopper, if that makes sense. So I actually think one of the best things that has happened in UK Blu-ray collecting this year has been Warner Archive actually releasing, those classic movies that we haven't been able to get a hold of here for either way. And I've sort of been accumulating a pile, and I watched Gold Diggers of 1933. Now the question is, have you seen it?
I have not, actually. And funnily enough, I haven't managed to pick up any of the Warner archives since they started in the UK, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think one of the nice things that we're all sort of waiting on is they tend to have good sales in America. You know, they've classically done the 4 for 44 and that kind of stuff. So you'd expect that at some stage that will happen here, and it'll be a nice place to go in and pick them up. So Gold Diggers of 1933 is one of those things that caught me totally by surprise, because at the heart of it, it is very much a whimsical, tale in the depression of this group of women who live together who want to star in a musical. And of course it's the depression, so they keep starting a musical and then it gets shut down because they have enough money, etc. And they eventually put one together with the help of their neighbour who writes songs, for instance. So it's very whimsical, and it becomes this film about class, the rich and the poor, and these girls that are, they basically call them call girls, even though they just want to act in theatre. Like it's a bit of a strange kind of bit put together, right? And then the last 15 minutes happen, and you know who Busby Berkeley is?
Yes.
The guy who did the choreographing of all of the magnificent Warner Archive, Warner Studio films that were over the top.
Mm.
The scene, or the Busby Berkeley number at the end of this, is like the biggest tonal shift I think I've ever seen in my entire life, because you have this kind of light romance going on. It's a bit whimsical, bit of song and dance, all of that kind of stuff going on, and then there's just this enormous political message at the end of this thing that lasts for 15 minutes in this massive Busby Berkeley orchestrated number, and I just was like jaw dropped. It's like, what just happened in this film? And it was interesting when going through the extras and people going, oh yeah, this film's quite famous for that, and you're like, okay, I never knew this was a film of note or anything like that. And I was like, the last number is absolutely magnificent. And in fact, if you just watch the film for that alone, it would be worth it. But it's the tonal shift that it comes towards the end. And the best part is they sort of lead you up. They sort of let you know it's coming, except you don't realise it's coming as you're going along. It's such a brilliant movie. I bowled over by the whole thing. I was just like, this is amazing. Yeah,
so which year did it come out? Was it from 1933? Or
that is a very good question. So there are a couple of versions, because there's also the Gold Diggers in 1935, which is a different film as far as it worked out. Because when I was looking, I finished the film and went, okay, why have I never heard of this? This seemed like something that should be of merit and people would talk about because of how it ends. But let's see exactly the year it came out. It's 1933 it came out, yeah. So
okay.
It came out exactly at the time. So it was made in the Depression era.
Yeah. And that was pre-code then, wasn't it? Pre-Hays Code.
And so it was pre-code, very much so. And this film feels like a reason why the code partly came in. I know the code was an awful lot about the sexual kind of stuff, and that sort of is in here, because there's kind of like some maybe inappropriate relationships, but it has like between the theatre girls, Joan Blondell's in it, who's always magnificent. Ginger Rogers is in it. Ruby Keeler. So there are a lot of very notable names throughout this, and just magnificent. Like, honestly, I just totally blown away.
It's reminding me of, for some reason, of do you know that film King of Jazz? That's from like 1930. Mm-hmm. It's got a Criterion.
Paul Whiteman. Yeah.
That's obviously pre-code, and it's funny. The films that were made pre-code, even if they didn't have anything that was, sensitive material or stuff that would be censored, the films were still weird. They would still just go in like a weird direction all of a sudden. Like you genuinely never know what you're getting with films from that period.
True. I think we all kind of feel this because most of us grew up with Hollywood films. There is the sense when you go to watch a Hollywood movie that it's going to end sort of predictably or something, which is kind of what the genesis of Time kind of brought through, to say you don't take risks in cinema. Now, occasionally that's subverted, thankfully, but but it was definitely much more common then that people just went, oh no, this is what we're doing at the end of this film, and that's my vision, and this is where we're going, and I'll make a different movie next week, because that's how the studio system worked back in those days, you know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because back then cinema still wasn't considered as an art form. It was still very much just an entertainment vehicle.
That's right.
So when you get people that had such vision back then, it's really quite interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah,
because auteur, etc., wasn't a theory. Like the auteur kind of idea that we would have, you know, people that were crafting stories and crafting narratives that were supposed to be a bit more than just kind of fluff entertainment. It's like, I suppose, if you compare somebody like Michael Curtiz, who was a studio director that churned loads and loads out very, very competently well made films. A lot of them are very celebrated, and yet there were a couple of people that were going, yeah, but within that, I'm going to do something slightly different or otherwise. So,
yeah. But I'm definitely going to add that to my list of stuff to pick up, because I'm very intrigued.
It's a good one to keep an eye out. Yeah, keep your eye out for the first sale whenever it arrives, because we're coming up to nearly a year that those are coming out, and I very much enjoy most of them. There are one, but the best part is, for most of them, you kind of know it's not going to be your jam, and it, like, they're doing some Marx Brothers, and you either know you like the Marx Brothers films or you don't, you know, that kind of stuff. So it can be quite more obvious. Next one I'm going to talk about is Compartment Number 6, which I had seen, but I actually ended up buying when I was in Manchester in the FOP that was in there, because I had the sale on that and it was going quite cheap. So Compartment Number 6 is a recent movie that it's Finnish, and it tells the story of a young lady who wants to go to Russia to visit and look at cave drawings. That's kind of her thing, and this is one of the things I love. Like, at the outset, you're like, doesn't really sound that great a movie. You know, as a premise or as a starting point, you're like, right, well, what is it about that? But she goes on this train journey, and she leaves behind a life that she thinks, and people that she likes, she has a relationship, etc., that she leaves behind to go and do this trek to see these cave drawings. And she arrives on the train with, I'd say, a bunch of people that she cannot stand to be around. They are not her type of people, or they're not the same class of people. They are people that she would really just, like a lot of us when we're travelling, she'd rather just be in a compartment by herself. She'd rather be in a cabin by herself, and just everybody leave her alone. And the film is actually about how we judge people, I would say, in a lot of cases. You know, the things that we value in life, and actually how experiences could change that, and all that kind of stuff. And it's a film that at the start seems quite cold, but sort of wins you over a lot of the way, a bit like the characters, etc., than the film, both in terms of her, the main character, and otherwise. And I think it's a very good example of these kind of modern films that kind of take a sort of nothing narrative and do want to tell a human story about it, and kind of do that introspective look at life and all of that other stuff that comes with it. And I thoroughly enjoyed Compartment Number 6. Eventually, because about halfway through, I was like, is anything going to happen in this? She's kind of just on a train.
Is it all set in one location? Is it like a 12 Angry Men kind of thing?
No, so they travel around, and they get on and off the train at various points. So they stop, you know, for bad weather, or they stop for a layover for a day, and she gets off, and she has these moments of, do I even want to continue on this journey? Do I really want to see these cave paintings? This is who I am. Or do I just want to go home back to the life that I want to know? So it does kind of go through, but you do get that sense, like a lot of classic British films, you know, but they would have the film set in the train compartment, and then as they move through, different people would come in and out of the compartment. It is a bit like that, though. So there are different people that come in and out of the compartment, and jazz it up, give it fresh energy a lot of the time. So
that sounds good.
So that's another. It's one that I wanted to see in the cinema and then didn't quite get to see. So when I got the opportunity to pick it up for, what was it, £8 or something for the Blu-ray, for those Curzon Blu-rays, I was like, well, you know.
Yeah, they're putting out quite a lot of films that I just didn't get the chance to see at the cinema. Yeah. And I really enjoyed Godland, which we've spoken a bit about before. So just any kind of new experiences like that, and like the film you're talking about, I'm all for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because they are kind of fresh voices, especially European directors, which, could be very lauded, etc. in their land, or have done, in a lot of cases, like smaller form films and then get a bit more of a budget as they keep on going through. Like Godland was 2.5 hours of existentialism for a lot of it, but also something really captivating,
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. So, yeah, that's mine. Anything else from yourself?
Let's have a look. Yeah, let's talk about this one. I watched this one the other night. Gorky Park. Have you heard of this film? This is a Kino Lorber.
I've heard of it.
So this is just a Blu-ray, no 4K. Directed by Michael Apted, who you might have heard about. He's a British director, but he made a lot of films in America. And this is an adaptation.
Most famous, I think, for... I was going to say most famous for... He did a couple of James Bonds, but also did the 63 and Under documentary as well, isn't that right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, that documentary series where he follows the children as they grow up every 7 years. Exactly, yeah. But yeah, he made this, which is an adaptation of a very famous American novel about 3 people that get killed in this park in Moscow. And there's kind of this conspiracy about why these 3 people have been killed. This is very much like one of those American movies where it's set in Russia and the people are meant to be Russian, but they're all speaking English. It's one of those.
Yes.
But I was very impressed with it, actually. Like, very thrilling. Some real surprises of violence in here. So yeah, I'm probably not selling the movie.
What year is it?
This 1983. So it stars William Hurt. Yeah, William Hurt is the lead character. And he'd only been in films a few years, because I think it was Altered States was his debut. And that was 1980. So he was very much like a leading man. You got Lee Marvin, who's like, classic actor. A lot of English actors in this. So all of the Russians are played by English actors, except William Hurt, who's putting on an English accent to be Russian. It's very strange. And Lee Marvin is just an American. He's just playing an American.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, great film.
It's quite interesting you'd pick that because I had heard of it, and it's a classic example of something that needs nearly a fresh release for you to remember. A lot of those 80s films that weren't necessarily the video shop, but there are a lot of films in the 80s that kind of were on TV a lot when I was younger, that had one playing on British TV and then were never seen again, and unless you find another way to watch it, like a new appreciation or a new release of something, it's just kind of one of those things that you kind of pigeonhole it in. Like it was a pretty good thriller, or it was a pretty good drama, or something like that. They all get kind of put in a big slush pile together, and it's nice to be able to look at those films with new eyes.
Exactly, and there are some quite quirky things about this, because Lee Marvin in particular, his character, he's actually given stuff to do in this. He's given interesting dialogue, whereas in a lot of Lee Marvin roles, he doesn't speak much. He's just there to be the tough guy, usually in army films or westerns. But here, he's actually given good dialogue, good acting scenes. So, yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. And is it one of those Kino discs that has just like a commentary to go along with it? Is it as well?
There is just one interview. That's all. There's no commentary. An interview with the director. He passed away a few years ago, I think. But
he did. That's right.
It must have been recorded just a few years before he passed away. But yeah, great film. It's got
an interesting director, like you say.
Yeah, the film's also got Brian Dennehy.
Yes, from FX. That Brian Dennehy.
Yes, exactly.
Or no, it's Brian. Oh, right. No, I am right. I am right.
He's in FX, yeah, and he's in.
Yes, that's right.
Have you seen that movie Belly of an Architect? The Peter Greenaway movie.
Peter Greenaway one. I haven't seen it though.
He's in that, and he's brilliant.
Right. I love those things where you're sitting watching, especially in company. You know, it's one of those things, and you go, people going, I recognise him. Or what my wife does, she always misappropriates an actor with the wrong film. And they say, oh, they're that person out of that film. To go, no, I can see why you would say that, but that's actually a different person. And they kind of look at you going,
oh, and it's funny. I'll mention one other actor in this. There's a scene where like you just hear the voice of some English guy off screen, and instantly I knew who the actor was, even though he's not a massive actor. It was Ian McDiarmid, you know, Emperor Palpatine in Star Wars.
Oh yes. So
he was in it, but instantly I recognised the voice. You know. So.
Interesting. You called him Emperor Palpatine rather than Senator Palpatine. That probably says something.
Yeah. Well, long live the Empire.
Indeed.
Listen, I think the Empire had some pretty good ideas. You know, it was just the poor execution. That's all it was.
Well, is that not what the entire Attack of the Clones film is about? Is that we've been sort of rooting for the wrong guys? You know, I think that's underappreciated.
A lot of people have made fun of this, but the Rebel Alliance, they are a group of terrorists. You know, they're not the good guys. The Empire are. Yeah.
But it's always that story of perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a separate Star Wars podcast coming your way, you know.
Exactly, yeah.
Indeed. Last one. Give us one more, Elliot, and then.
Okay, I'm gonna. We said we weren't going to talk about it, but we'll talk a bit about Haneke, the trilogy on Criterion. I know we said that we don't like to watch like nihilistic movies. This is definitely a bit of that. Yeah, I mean, where to start? Have you seen the ones in this set, like Benny's video?
I haven't seen any of them, and I would say in general, I would say I've hardly seen any Michael Haneke, but that's probably about 5 or 6 movies. Like, it's not inconsequential, but in what feels like his run of films, it feels like there's just so much more.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this is like, so weirdly he started out as a filmmaker quite late. I think he was almost 50 when he started directing, which is quite interesting.
There's hope for us all yet.
Yeah, because I want to say he was born in the 40s. I know he's in his 80s now, and people are questioning whether Happy End was his last movie or if he's going to be making some more. But yeah, if you've seen one of his films, he has that kind of spirit right at the start in Seventh Continent. And the second one in this set, I won't like spoil anything about it, but Benny's video is just, it's weird. It's a bit like Jean Dielman if it just suddenly got very, very depressing towards the end. It's like it's if Jean Dielman was a good movie. That's what I'll say. Yeah, shots fired.
Shots fired, indeed. I was just going to say. Well, I mean, before you even said that, I was going to say it's what people would hope Jean Dielman's going to do at some stage. They just want something to happen, you know.
Exactly. So, like, in the way that Jean Dielman is kind of all build up to this climax, that film is that, but it's also half the length. So, in my mind, that's much better.
So, like Jean Dielman, but watchable. Is that what?
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. Do you know what? I think that's a fair opinion. You know, I have no problem with that opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we did the Sight and Sound podcast, we talked a bit about this, but I just think Jean Dielman. Listen, I can understand what the film is and the reasons for making it and things like that. But when I speak to people about why it's so good, they have to start intellectualizing a lot of it, and they have to start saying things. You know, they'll start pointing out like why I didn't get it. When I feel like I shouldn't have to get a film necessarily. I should feel something, and I don't know.
Yeah. It's the problem that most long movies have, but especially long movies that fall in that branch of slow cinema, because what it's really trying to do is show you the mundane, so that when the mundane even deviates ever so slightly, you can recognise it, and you can only do that by doing that repeatedly time and time and time again. To the point you spot the difference. Whereas, you know, there are other long movies that have a narrative or otherwise. Like, I think of something like Brighter Summer Day, which I thought was going to be one thing and then became something else at the end. And I think it uses the longer run time to do something a bit different. It asks a different question at the end. But again, I still think the question is, was it necessary to tell that story in that length of time rather than actually do something else with that time or shorten it down or something like that? I think that's all fair.
Yeah.
But we were talking about Haneke just before we started recording, because I did watch Happy End recently, which I was under no illusions was not necessarily going to be a film with a happy ending. And I'll not spoil that for anybody, but if you've ever seen a Haneke movie before, you'll know kind of what you're looking for. It's, Happy End's almost like his greatest hits. In some ways, you know, of the films that I have seen of his, it's got a bit of them all in it. But I was saying to you earlier, I did not realise that there was a Haneke-verse, the extended universe of Michael Haneke movies, because one of the characters recounts one of the plots of his other movies, start, middle, and end in the movie. And I was kind of caught a bit dumbfounded and like, is this a known thing? This must be a known thing. This must happen in other points in his movies. And it's something I'm going to have to watch out for, you know, because the man has the big film catalogue, as we all know.
Was that moment a bit like...
an interesting director.
I was going to say, was it a bit like that DiCaprio meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where you're like pointing at the screen, you're like, it's that bit.
Yes.
You know, that kind of thing.
That's and it's only a certain type of person that's actually going to sit there and go, what is happening here? You know, this is utterly bizarre. Like I think Haneke does really emotional cinema quite well. You know, when he does decide to do emotion or to make a point, he usually does a very good job of it. You know, he makes sure you don't miss it. Happy End, I think, is a bit more, because it's kind of rehash of an awful lot of stuff. I think it's sort of on the nose, but I think a lot of the things, it sort of links very well to compartment number 6. It's this kind of, when you view from the outside somebody's life and think what's great and you think what's wrong about their life, but you actually go to examine it and actually you realise who the good people are, and you know, it kind of redress it, and you don't judge people based on material wealth or what they portray, but who they are as valued people. It sort of talks a bit about that. But is quite depressing for a lot of it. There's not a lot of good happens to anybody in the entire movie.
Yeah, and if I can give a shout out to another film that we love, which we talked about recently, Sacred Spirit is very Haneke, isn't it? If you know what I mean, like the way it kind of builds up and then suddenly it just gets dropped on you.
Secret Spirit. I did like that film. That is one of the few films I've ever watched and went, should I recommend this? Because if I recommend it and people watch it and get to a certain point in the movie, they're going to judge me actually for what I'm saying that I like about the movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it falls into the definition of wild for sure, like this tonal shift that it does, but it kind of pulls the rug from underneath you. And again, it was all there.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing you watch again and again, and it's like a lot. Do you know? I've found over the past kind of 18 months, those are my really favorite first time watching experiences, where the film takes you along on a journey. You think it's going in one direction, and then all of a sudden, it throws you another direction. Like another film that we've watched this year, you've talked about in your channel, and I've talked about Exotica by Adam McGowan. Again, does the same thing. You can go back and watch that film again, and you go, every line that was said in this film now has a double meaning the whole way along, and you're like, this is so clever, so clever. So yeah, I'll talk about one more. I'll talk about this because it's a more interesting director. So Limits of Control, which is the Arrow Academy, Jim Jarmusch. Have you seen it?
Yes, yeah, I've seen this.
So Jarmusch is another one of those directors I just don't really know what to feel about. I sort of like a shtick. I like a style. I like the stories, the way he tries to tell it. Do I enjoy his movies like to say, oh God, I love that one? I'm not sure. And this is another one that falls kind of totally into that. Like it's a sort of game of Hitman Pass the Parcel.
Yeah.
So as our main character, silent character, moves through the film, he gets new bits of information or new things from people to a point where he ends up at his target. And you kind of go, okay, it's very slow, it's very methodical, but again, it's another one of those films where it gets to the end and it's like, here, I have a point to make about this. And in 10 minutes, kind of throws exactly what the whole film was all about in the first place straight at you. And you go, well, it was a bit heavy-handed. But, again, there's something about Jarmusch's style I like without necessarily being able to say that's what it is.
Yeah, it's quite hard to describe what his style even is, I think, because even in his filmography, he's done a lot of different kinds of things. Like
Films, yeah.
Yeah, was his last film Dead Don't Die, the zombie movie, or did he make one after that? I can't remember.
That's a very good question.
But anyway, my point is, he makes a zombie movie, but he also makes a movie like Limits of Control. Yeah, but like you, I do love his style. Some films work a lot more for me than others. Yeah.
Yeah, Dead or Die is his last one, which is a solid 5.5 on IMDb.
Yeah.
And even Limits of Control is like a 6.2. It's not well thought of, but it's definitely a film of merit. Like, there's definitely, I think he does characters very, very well. You know, the people that are sort of interesting to watch. And I think of all of the films that I've seen in Jarmusch, there's always that. You know, even in something like Down by Law. I mean, I can't say I root for any of the characters necessarily, but they're all sort of very watchable and kind of you can follow along with the story. So, yeah. So that's what I've been watching recently. That's what you've been watching recently. Sorry.
I was going to ask, do you have a favourite Jarmusch film? Is there one in particular that you really like from him?
I don't think so. Like even something like Only Lovers Left Alive. I like, but I kind of see Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton a bit too much in the characters. You know that bit where you kind of see the actor before the characters a little bit. And I sort of like the world and the kind of, like I say, the shtick that he kind of portrays and kind of shows. Do I love it? I don't know. But if I had to pick one, maybe Only Lovers Left Alive. Quite possibly.
Yeah, that's a good choice. Definitely.
What about you?
I do really like Patterson with Adam Driver.
Which I haven't seen.
That is a great one. It's very stoic because it's all about poetry. So, yeah, that's a great one.
I love that though. What's your favourite film by that director? And you say it's stoic. That's
well. Listen. I can use this kind of terminology around someone like you. I wouldn't necessarily go around telling people to watch a stoic movie about poetry.
You know, I've just seen Avengers Endgame. What's next? And you do a response video and say, "Well, we'll have the stoic film, Patterson, or existential film." You know, there's a certain type of thing. It's the joke I always make with yourself and everybody else when people say, "Oh, what are you into?" You know, somebody you knew, and you say, "Oh, movies," and they say something to the effect of, "Well, have you seen the new Matt Damon movie?" And they go, "Not those movies." I generally don't. Not that I have anything against Matt Damon movies, because I generally enjoy a lot of them. But the ones that I really like to spend my time with are usually a bit more left field than that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Because I'll get to
like
these
Killer Condom.
Like Killer Condom, indeed, which I still haven't got around to watching. I feel sort of like I need. There's definitely got to be a right moment where that's you're like, right now is the time. Christmas Day, just after you've had dinner, everybody's in the room together.
or Valentine's Day.
Or yes, Valentine's Day. Well, to be fair, I had a Valentine's Day once when, yes, I was married at that stage. I wasn't long married, and it was like Valentine's Day. We'll watch a movie, yes. And my wife says, right, what we'll watch, and you know. There is a normal suite of things you can pick for Valentine's Day, but we decided to watch Takashi Miike's 13 Assassins. And it's one of the best Valentine's Day movies I have ever seen. It was absolutely fantastic, and we enjoyed it both immensely. And there was blood and guts all over the screen, but you know, it was highly entertaining, as Mike can tell.
Yeah. At least it wasn't Audition from Mike.
No, it wasn't Audition or Oh Boy. You know, Oh Boy would be a pretty terrible Valentine's Day movie.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I also watched with my wife, except I had headphones on and she didn't. And let's just say the headphones were flung across the room at a certain stage.
Funnily enough, I went and saw The Handmaiden with my mum at the cinema.
Right.
Including the lengthy lesbian sex scenes. Yeah. I think it's because I think I'd shown my mum some Korean movies and she'd like them, like some of the thrillers. So we went and saw The Handmaiden, and to be fair, I think she did really enjoy it. But some of those,
it's a brilliant movie.
Yeah, but some of those sex scenes go on for quite a long time because I think it was the extended cut that they were showing as well. So
it's a very long movie as well.
Mm.
Your parents and their cinema watching capabilities are definitely something worth celebrating, though, because like I can go around to my dad's house and, you know, EastEnders can be on and two characters start kissing and he'd just turn the TV off. It's still to this day, and I'm like, you know, I have two kids, you know. I don't know what to say about that anyway. So yeah, maybe that's a different special films you should not watch around your parents that you didn't know at the time until you were halfway through it. Indeed. Yeah, indeed. So that's what we've been watching recently. We'll talk about, you know, things that are coming up in the near future. Obviously, we've had recent news that Criterion are making a comeback in the UK. And sort of like everything that I wanted for Christmas coming out, not just in terms of titles, but in terms of the fact that, right, they made a statement release with, we're going to do 4K for the very first one. The very first one that came out was After Hours, which, I mean, I've already picked up. Everybody I know that's been sort of interested in it in this sphere has already got a copy of, but the principle is well set, and then to accompany that with Freaks is pretty good. The Todd Browning film, yeah. So I'm very hopeful. Too hopeful, maybe.
No, to be honest, I'm very hopeful as well. It's going to be interesting to see what the next announcement is now that we've had these two.
Yeah. There are two things I'm looking out for, right? Because when they said they were going to swap distributor, it had to be for a reason. Either who was doing it previously, which was Sony Home Entertainment, I think, they didn't want to do it anymore, which seemed unlikely. It seemed to me more of a Criterion decision to say there are things that are not happening in this territory with these releases that are happening, say in the US. So one is obviously they own a lot of licenses in the UK that they have not been using. That will lapse at some stage. So number of titles is one, and two is the seals. They do not create Criterion favour in the UK at any stage, and I think those are the two things to watch out for over the next whatever months, years that we'll have.
Yeah, because I think even at those prices, they are expensive, you know. So, and I said in my video about this topic that I think Criterion must make at least 90% of their revenue during sale periods. Because I know a lot of people just wait for the sale, because with Criterion, there's no limited edition model. So it's like, why not just wait a few months? Yeah.
Well, I think I used to wonder about the model, and then you would see that specifically in July and November, right, they will have a real, you know, pillar release, something that will capture a lot of minds at the time and say, look, this is the time to, even though we're only going to make half price probably on a lot of these sales, this will drive people to the store because they will go and pick up this title or this box set, as it was, you know, for many years. They've kind of fallen off that kind of big box set in the past couple of years, but they encourage people to sort of buy in the sales because, like, I mean, YouTube's just swimming in haul videos for that entire month.
Yeah. And I think another like indication that the sales are where they make most of their money is the fact that over the years they have never once increased the price of their Blu-rays. You know, the retail price has always been $40 for the last 15 years, I think. So, you know, even the inflation of the last 2 years, you would think they would increase their price. So I think that,
Yeah, for sure.
I think the margin they make on these titles must be a lot. You know, like per unit cost, if they're making them at scale, probably doesn't cost them much.
See, I wonder about that as well, because when they started off, they were the only ones really doing it. Now, this has been a model that's been sort of, or a space even that's been kind of infringed upon by lots of different companies now, doing it at very little cost, you know, because I think some films, when they're being bought and sold in interesting titles, I think the people, the license holders, extract every penny that they can out of it for things that they were just sitting on and doing nothing for years. And because of the market the way it is, they may think that this is the last bastion of making money out of physical releases for those films in some way. And I sort of see the creep in other price of other labels kind of catching up to that. So, but as you say, Criterion haven't changed. And it must mean that a lot of the titles they had for a long time, they got at a very cheap price, you know?
Yeah.
Comparatively,
definitely.
You know?
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do in the UK.
Yeah, but as I say, the next release slate, or the next month of release slates will be interesting. But it sort of puts a kibosh on what I'm gonna say pre-order as far as important discs, because I know you would get a lot of stuff say important.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I get a lot, but I kind of highlight certain releases and say I would like that one, I would like that one. But if they're going to come out again here, I may as well wait a month or two just to see. Especially those kind of rare things that I like Draw Longzo's just out this week. I desperately want to see Draw Longzo. But it seems to be ripe that Criterion would have the license for that in the UK as well.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, any of those kind of, not to be disparaging, but like lesser titles, if you know what I mean. Not the big tentpole after hours kind of things, but the ones where you can look at and you're like, Criterion in the UK could definitely just release this. Yeah. But then I don't know, because the UK market is so competitive now, and like it's ridiculous. I don't even know who holds what licenses, and you know, with the example of Days of Heaven, which has never had a UK Blu-ray in any capacity, is that now going to change with this new Criterion, or is that always going to be like locked up in some kind of agreement? I don't know.
Well, we have had, as you know, a lot of the other Malick films released here in Blu-ray in some way. We haven't had Tree of Life, and we haven't had, obviously, Days of Heaven. Or not Tree of Life, Thin Red Line is the one I meant to say, yeah.
Yeah. Did Thin Red Line not come out? I'm sure it did. On
in the UK?
Maybe it didn't.
UK Criterion is what I meant.
Yeah, did it not? Maybe I'm totally wrong.
I don't think so. I do own it, but I'm pretty sure I imported that one. That's where the lines become blurred a little bit.
Yeah.
And you kind of realise what you have in your shelf that was imported versus something that actually came out here. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
No, it did, because it's on Zavi for £21.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. It's hard to keep track of what has actually come out over here compared to in the US.
To what's there. So I'm sort of on the fence about what I pre-order coming up in terms of releases. Or can I be patient? Am I the patient type? That's the big question, and I think we all know the answer to that question. But on that note, things that are coming out in the next couple of weeks. Oh my God, September the 18th and September the 25th. Honestly, I may as well just lock myself in a room, because there is so much stuff coming out those 2 weeks that it's just going to make me cry. There's that nice mix of stuff that's interesting and stuff that you consider kind of necessary. So I'll sort of go through the list very quickly, and then kind of see from Eureka on the 18th and the 25th. I'll put their two releases together. They have CC Straight, which is another one of the Kung Fu releases. They've got Valley Girl, the Nicolas Cage movie, which is, I would say, somewhat overpriced, but there's certainly lovely artwork, etc. And I'd probably pick it up because I'm an idiot. And then Touch of Evil's coming out in 4K.
Yes.
Which I just have a weakness for. There's just no way that I couldn't not pick that up. That's a big release for the month.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you sit in Valley Girl?
Valley Girl. I've never seen it, so I can't really comment on like how good it is. But I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued from everything that I've seen.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
You know, I'll always appreciate a performance from him.
Romantic comedy. Yeah, I'm on board with that. But Touch of Evil. Ugh. A lot of people say they don't like the artwork of it, of the UK release. I think it's stunning.
Yeah, I think it's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand that argument at all. So yeah, I think, well, you've been talking about, like, in general, I think Eureka have not released a bad movie in a very long time. They have been very consistent in their output, and quality of releases and quality of films have been terrific. Arrow, Blood and Black Days 4K, re-release of Ringu in 4K, and then Psycho Collection of Carlito's Way, both in 4K as well. That's too much stuff, Elliot.
I mean, it's all stuff that I want, but do I need it? You know, do I need it right now? Like all of those, like the Psycho movies I've got Psycho 1 and 2 already.
2, yeah.
I've got Carlito's Way on 4K already from the studio title. I've got Blood and Black Lace on the old Blu-ray, and I'm sure it's going to look amazing on 4K, but, you know, I've got to prioritise.
But that's exactly the way that I'm looking at it as well. I'm kind of looking like I have Ring on Blu-ray as well, and that, and especially Psycho. Like, I already have a 4K version of that disc, obviously from the Hitchcock's collection. That's in there. That's already just it's like those discs, but they're great discs.
Yeah,
they don't necessarily scream out, "Oh God, we need more extras." I mean, they're pretty fully featured, those discs. So those ones are maybe a bit easier for me to go. I can wait for a sale on those. I can kind of go okay. And if the limited edition sale's out in the meantime, I'm actually okay with a lot of those. Like the Carlito's Way artwork's beautiful. The Psycho Collection will probably get a re-release without a booklet or something, you know, for it in line again. Just fine with those. What else have we got? Ones I'm most interested for, and this maybe speaks an awful lot to me. It's a label actually I know you quite like a lot, the Studio Canal Vintage Classics line.
Oh yeah.
So they are putting out. They classically do British films, but they're doing the first two Kira Muratova films, which I first heard about from Mark Cousins' Women Make Film documentary. He talks about Muratova a lot in those films and why, frankly, it's astonishing that her films have been released. So The Long Farewell and Brief Encounters are coming out via that Vintage Classics line, not the World Cinema line, which again I think is sort of interesting because that one seems to have died a little bit. And they seem to just be concentrating on the Vintage Classics. Those are really underrated discs and films and restorations that they do in all of those. And they're always reasonably priced. And I'm a big fan. And the beautiful slipcovers, especially when you line them up.
There's a few that I've watched recently. Let's see if I can find them. This is always a test because there's no order to stuff here. I think did we talk about this one, Frida? This was a really good one.
Oh, Frida. Well, so I've seen Frida. I think Frida is pretty great as well. That kind of we suspect the foreigner kind of film, the post-war.
Yeah, and it was because Frida is played by Mai Zetterling, who is a director in her own right. Indeed. She had that Criterion set come out recently, so yeah, just an interesting connection there. But in particular, you were talking about. I was going to say about good restorations. The Saraband for Dead Lovers, the 4K restoration of that is just incredible. Like, because it's Technicolor, it's shot by Douglas Slocum, who he famously did Indiana Jones and all those movies, but he did a lot in that kind of early period in the 40s. And it's a different kind of Technicolor to Jack Cardiff, Powell and Pressburger kind of. It's a bit darker. So, yeah, just interesting stuff that not many other labels are kind of... Maybe it's because they can't get the rights to that kind of stuff, where Studio Canal probably have it already. Because I know that Studio Canal also... They had a partnership with Network, didn't they? Where Network would... if you looked on the back of the Blu-rays, it would say Studio Canal on the Network ones. So, yeah, that's my weird
Of course,
one.
interestingly, it seems... Yeah, Studio Canal and Criterion are partnering for a lot of these restorations as well at the moment as well. So we're getting the others, etc., that are coming out here, which makes me wonder if there's a Pianist 4K coming from Criterion.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, because what else? Because they did... They're doing the trial, aren't they? Criterion are doing the trial on 4K.
Yeah, they did the trial. They did Mulholland Drive together. Indeed.
Yeah. The piano, I think, was that done together as well?
Yes, it was. Yeah, piano. The others, as we just said.
Yeah.
So every time a 4K disc gets released by either company, I'm kind of expecting the other one to come out with a similar disc in short notice. So maybe we're getting Cutthroat Island 4K from Criterion. Maybe that's coming.
Yeah. Or King Kong 78.
King Kong 78, yes, indeed. It could, like, you never know, you know.
I know.
Godzilla versus King Kong box set of a different nature, yeah, it could be done.
Could be.
Indeed. So yeah, those are great. I love those releases, and especially like I spoke about in the last episode, the Cult Classics one, that line that they've started doing as well, which has, I mean, I called it Lenny 101. Lenny Einstein, I know you've seen.
Yes. And that, what's the Western called? It's got some really long name.
Shoot, if you, what did you call it? I can see the cover.
Something like Shoot to Kill, or I can't remember it.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's a typical Italian title.
Yeah. But I loved that film. That film was incredible.
Yeah, so they do really, really great stuff. The interesting one that I seen coming up was the Misfits in 4K from Altitude. I sort of was like just going through the just preparation. Like, not that I do a lot of preparation for shows like this, but there's like a media book kind of version coming up with the Marilyn Monroe Clark Gable film.
Because I know that Cape Light did that in Germany. Cape Light Pictures, they did the 4K of the Misfits. So.
Yeah, so it's coming out here in the next couple of weeks from Altitude, and Altitude doing 4Ks, I think, is notable in some ways. Maybe see how that one goes, and then the other 4K makes me angry a little bit. Not that it's not a great film and doesn't deserve it, but Breaking the Waves is coming out in 4K as a separate release. I mean, it's reasonably well priced, but the same day the Lars von Trier set's coming out with all the movies without the 4K disc of Breaking the Waves, and I'm like,
yeah, they did the same thing with the Wim Wenders set, because the same day they released Wings of Desire 4K in the Steelbook, and it's just the normal Blu-ray in the set, which is annoying.
It is a little bit, although I will say those director sets that they have been releasing are, while expensive, at least beautiful. You know, they feel like proper collections of a director's work that's and worth celebrating.
Yeah, I've been working through that Vendors set, and I'm going to do a video in the near future, so people can keep an eye out for my late thoughts on that a year after it came out or whatever.
But to be fair, it is one of the problems with those big sets, though, I think in general, is that lots of people will do unboxings of things like that, but there are very few takedowns and reviews of big sets like that, because it takes a lot of time and effort and, you know, a thing to go through. But especially a director like Wenders, who has numerous high points, like the highest of high points in all of his cinema in some cases, kind of dotted throughout his filmography. I think his is a body of work that I think really lends itself to examination in some ways as one kind of put together thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Including my favourite film of all time, probably. That's not Sister Act 2. Anyway.
Which one's that? Paris, Texas?
Paris, Texas. I just think it's just incredible. It's one of those things that I just watch and go, how did that come out of somebody's brain? And then you find out that some of it was sort of accidental, and it makes me feel a little bit better about it. Like some of the shots in the mirror were sort of done and came out by accident, and they kept it because it kind of worked so well, and you kind of go, okay, he didn't think that and do it. That makes me feel a little better, because, you know, you just look sometimes and go, somebody's brain's working on a whole other level than I could even possibly conceive of. And then Targets is coming out in BFI eventually in the Blu-ray here after the Criterion release, which I'm looking forward to. And then one of the Renzo Mazzetti collection that's coming out from BFI, which again I knew nothing about, but it's like a lot of post-war British films, short films that kind of capture the aftermath of the bombed cities and all of that. BFI do that better than anybody. I love that stuff. And I think especially those kind of scenes that you don't see an awful lot in British TV anymore, like even the old sets of the documentaries of post-war Britain, pre-war Britain, and you kind of get to see those as somebody that grew up in British society or otherwise, and kind of go, like, I recognise an awful lot of facets of this, but seeing it in like this true sense of the following kids to the park for the day and stuff that's really like mundane, but you get an eye through the world of all that stuff. So
yeah, it's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah. And then I thought I'd just mention one studio release, which is Asteroid City, which I mentioned very briefly in the last episode as well, which I've seen in the cinema. And I always never know what to do with Anderson ones, because it will eventually come out in Criterion. But maybe not for 10 years. I still haven't got Isle of Dogs.
Yeah. Did you like Asteroid City? I can't remember if we spoke about it.
So I'm not sure if we spoke about it. I liked Asteroid City a lot.
Yeah.
I seen a lot. I was at the cinema. It was actually one of the few times I was in the cinema recently where it was a full house, absolutely full house, and so it was obviously a lot of Wes Anderson fans, and they all were walking out the cinema, and a lot of people were trying to make sense of it, and I was like, I don't think this is a film to make sense of. I think this is a film that's about a lot of different things that are very Wes Anderson-ish, but I enjoyed it for what it is. Like the soundtrack and everything put together, it's just fab.
I absolutely loved it. I think it's possibly it's up there as one of my favourite films from him, and I could even on future watches even see it being my favourite of his films. It feels like I know people say this about every single one of his films that comes out, but it feels like a culmination of everything he's been doing before, and it is the most Wes Anderson movie ever. But yeah, it's great.
I sort of wanted to do. It's one of the few times I came out of cinema and went, I just want to kind of record on my own video thoughts on this, because it feels like every Wes Anderson movie that comes out now, it's like he's almost making fun of people's need to have everything spelled out for them and drawn out to them. So even in this film, narratively speaking, he tells you, like, this is Act 1, this is the first scene of 3, this is the second scene, you know, and then he has a narrator for some of it, so just in case you're lost for a little bit, we'll narrate this just so that it's there. And then he produces a movie that sort of doesn't have a narrative that folds in together, and you know, and I sort of think he's making fun of that whole thing, and how structurally he's making those movies, and especially with the big stars that he has. Like it's like Jeff Goldblum, blinking you're missing, kind of thing.
Yeah, that is a great performance from him.
It is.
There's one thing I'll say about the film. There is an image that I think is kind of emblematic of what the film is, and it's that, you know, when they first arrive at the place and there's like a road that's being built and it's like a ramp up,
Yes,
but it goes nowhere and it's literally just
nowhere.
the ramp up, and that is what the film is in a way. It's like this journey that doesn't go anywhere, but yeah, I love it for that.
Yeah, we feel and try. I just love Anderson as a filmmaker. I just think he's endlessly interesting. And as each film comes out, every film becomes every scene a screensaver kind of thing. Like, press pause at any point in any of his movies and you have something you can hang on the wall. There's just so much detail. It's almost like The Simpsons on steroids. You know, all the stuff in the background, all the little things that draw in, and you press pause and you really get into it. Oh, that's what that means. Oh, he's just brilliant.
Yeah.
And I'm very glad to say that I have a family full of people that kind of do like his method of storytelling as well. So we actually get to do all that together. It's one of the few directors we got to go and kind of all go to the cinema, all ages, and say that was cool.
Oh, that's good.
And take it for what it is. So that's that. So that's what's coming out in the next couple of months. I hope everybody, you know, has fun. They've got 88 films coming out. They've more kung fu stuff coming out. Memento, of course, is coming out from 101 on their black label in a rather expensive release.
Yeah, and
sort of okay in Memento.
Something I'm excited for is Kino are doing Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, the Michael Cimino movie,
on
4K. So I'm going to import that at some point because I love that film.
Oh, there you go. There's Elliot costing me more money again. Yes, I haven't been keeping up with what's coming out for Kino because I'm like, that's a road I don't need to go down. But for the likes of Sam to think for like things of Severin coming out, and you're like, okay, I can't escape that one. Because I know nothing about it, that'll be easy enough to kind of wait until Sam comes back and says this is brilliant. And you go, okay, I'm in. But yeah, there's things coming out, and of course, towards the end of the month or starting next month, that big Warner Archive set's coming out, the big 4K, the £300 one that people are being asked to buy for Rio Bravo.
Yeah.
And Rio Bravo is a great movie, a magnificent movie, but a bit like you were saying about Lawrence of Arabia or Gandhi, there is a premium, a price that is just a step too far.
Yeah. It's kind of baffling because I still don't know who that set is for. Because you're only really getting the value out of that set if you don't have any of the films already. So, yeah.
But it's only collectors buying 4K sets at £300.
Exactly. So it's anyone who wants this already has all of the films they like that are in the set.
Like, it's not like they're obscure films on the inside and that have not been released over a long time. Like, somebody's bound to have The Wizard of Oz if they're a fan of Wizard of Oz. Somebody's bound that, and if you like Wizard of Oz, you probably like Singing in the Rain. And if you like, you know, you can go on and on and on. I do like that they broke them into smaller boxes, which was kind of nice. But this big set is a head scratcher, and in some ways, I sort of hope it's the last one we see of that. Like, I'd even much rather prefer the Columbia Classics model, where they at least give you 6 for something that I'll not say it's reasonably priced or anything, but at least it feels like an event when when Volume 4 comes out, it'll be an event of 6 releases they picked.
Well, yeah,
okay. Yeah,
at least with those, the 6 films are all new to the format. They're all.
That's right.
That's the only place you can get them. Whereas with this, it just doesn't feel good buying this because even you can say things like, "Oh, well, just sell your old discs that you're going to have replacements for," but I don't want to have to do that just to enjoy a product.
And selling discs it's sucky. I don't know anybody that likes selling discs.
No.
A lot of people just go to CX and go, give me whatever I can for this rather than me go through the eBay troll or otherwise. They're selling it between friends or otherwise it's always better.
Yeah.
I always think selling on the likes of the couple of Facebook groups, etc., is an awful lot more satisfying because at least you know it's going to another collector or something like that. So, yeah. So time to move on to our film that you deliberated a long time over. I think it's fair to say. We had a lot of options for talking about. And peek behind the wall. You sent me a picture of a stack of Blu-rays. To say, here are like 15 films. What will we do?
Yeah.
And you picked a film that is... Actually, I have to say, the first film I've seen by him. And I own two more on the shelf. Sorry, I'll not get into what they are. But it's quite well thought of in terms of rating. On IMDb, it's a 7.3, and Letterboxd is a 3.8. So it is quite well thought of. Mm-hmm. But what is the film, Elliot?
The film is, and I'll do the reveal of the Blu-ray. It's called Moonlighting. This is from Jerzy Skolimowski, a Polish director. But he made this in England with our man Jeremy Irons. And do you want me to describe the story? Shall I give it a go?
You could do the plot. Yeah, I give it a go because I think it's a fairly a seemingly straightforward plot, but yeah.
Yeah. So it's a film that's set at the time it was made, so the 1980s, and we follow these 4 Polish construction workers who have come to London to basically renovate this house. But they're doing it illegally because you need a visa to come and work here. So they're doing it, and they're actually staying in the house while they are renovating it. And Jeremy Irons plays one of these 4 guys, and he's the only one that can speak English. The rest can only speak Polish. So there is a kind of language barrier here, and it's that barrier that creates a lot of the tension and the suspense when Jeremy Irons' character knows stuff that the other guys don't know. So yeah, I think that's kind of boiling it down to what it's about.
It's a tough film to put in terms of genre because broadly speaking, it's just a drama. But there's something very darkly comic about it as well, in terms of kind of how he finds British life and, fitting into British society, and how he manipulates around the idea that, because basically they come to renovate this house because the conversion rate of the zloty against the pound is so great that they, £10 is a week's salary.
Yeah.
Or something in Poland, isn't that what they say? So they think if they come here and work for a while, they will make a fortune, and then they'll go back to their family and be able to bring presents, etc.
Yeah, but what they don't realise is that they have to buy all of the materials here, and they have to buy all of the food and the living costs. So that money very quickly just disappears. And yeah.
So, what did you like about it?
I mean, I liked everything about this film, I'll be honest. You said it's a 3.8 on Letterboxd, but it's a 5-star one for me.
Right.
What I like about it is, I think it's tackling some real social issues yes. Of the working class, but also issues of immigration in this country, and how people not from here, even if they are skilled workers, are almost seen as like, just lower class citizens, basically. And all the while it's doing that social commentary, it is very entertaining because it is suspenseful, I think. There is a sense of dramatic irony because we know something that these characters don't know. His Polish speaking fellows, we know what is happening back home in Poland that they don't know. So yeah, I like it because it's dealing with issues, but also is very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting how it's sort of like that period in Britain is very sort of early Thatcherite part of Britain, where it was almost, hammering the British people that were kind of like builders and all of that kind of stuff into the ground, the kind of working class Britons as well in terms of economically, and here they were coming into that thinking this was going to be the savior and will set them up for life in terms of a lot of ways. And it's the use of the supermarket as like this social vehicle, but also this hub of a community that he really explores quite a lot. And I think it's so wonderfully done in terms of the different types of people within the supermarket and how they fit in.
Yeah, because the supermarket, the use of surveillance and the fact that he is being watched when he's in the supermarket, and that says a lot about this country as a whole. You know, I know that a lot of Americans, when they look at the UK, they think we are some kind of massive surveillance state, which in a way we are, because there are cameras everywhere.
Everywhere, yeah.
But this film really does kind of show how that surveillance impacts people, and how, in a way, it shapes Jeremy Irons' character, because he himself becomes he starts watching people. There's a scene where they have a skip where they're putting all the old rubbish from the house into the skip, and he is watching people to make sure they don't put their rubbish in the skip, because I don't know about you, that is a massive thing in this country. If you buy a skip, if you hire a skip, you don't want anyone putting their stuff in there. It's a real serious like crime against someone if you put your rubbish in the skip.
Yeah, it's those unspoken like social norms. Even though it's sitting out in the middle of the street, it's blocking the street in a lot of cases. It's my skip. Yeah. I paid for the skip.
And
if anybody puts a can of Coke in.
Yeah. What's interesting is it's the neighbour who is the one who kind of talks down and looks down on them, and he's kind of seen as like a kind of upper class guy. It's him that's putting his stuff in the skip, and he's stealing from them in a way.
But there's that scene, again, without revealing too much about it, but the very first scene in the supermarket when people are looking at these four men, not knowing how to act even in a supermarket with their little trolleys and all the rest of it, and it's somebody else caught shoplifting. No, people are looking at them, watching them, being wary of them, and somebody else gets caught shoplifting and the thing from stealing something and get pulled to the side, and they're kind of looking around them going, what's happening in this place? Like, this is not what we do. And that idea that you're saying of surveillance, how it changes behaviour by its very nature of being there. You know, I think it also kind of does that. Plus, while these four men are here together, it's basically him and the other three men that are nearly separate from each other, because he's minding the money. He can speak the language, but he can't speak it well enough to actually develop friendships or anything like that. He doesn't get that far. And then you have these other three men that are completely isolated in terms of otherwise, who are looking at him going, right, what's happening here, and how all of that develops. It's an interesting end to the movie, I think, as well.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
And
I've seen a lot of people say they were unsatisfied by the ending, but I sort of think, yes, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. The thing is, I don't know what people want as an ending for this kind of movie, you know. But yeah, I don't want to spoil it for anyone that might want to watch this.
Yeah, well, for sure.
Going back to the supermarket, it's funny, we're talking, you mentioned Margaret Thatcher. The woman that works in the supermarket, I don't know if it's intentional, but she looks quite like her. And I don't know if that is... because she's got this red hair, she's sort of got the same kind of face as a... Yeah. I don't know if that was a choice.
She's also the cynical Jobsworth as well within the confines of that supermarket. I just think that, the supermarket, the three main characters that we see, the manager, there's herself, who's obviously the assistant manager otherwise, and then the girl that works on the till counter, is a pretty good representation of a lot of different parts of British life around that stage. And I think it's such an interesting social construct to use that as the idea, and for a lot of the drama and the humour and the things that happen within the film, how much you can do with just a very simple setup in terms of storytelling.
Yeah, I just think it's a great film that I think describing what it's about wouldn't necessarily sell someone on this film. I think it is one that you just have to give a go. And I think Jeremy Irons gives such a convincing performance here. When you watch this, there's no doubt in your mind that he's not actually this Polish guy. It's brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a review I seen that somebody had said something along the lines of, I couldn't work out if he was an English speaking Pole or a Polish speaking English person. You know, I thought that was a very nice way to put it.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of acting. But, you know, he's a brilliant actor anyway, for sure. But I think it's interesting that he was cast in this main role rather than having a famous Polish actor, because if he was moving across from Poland, I'm sure that was an option.
Yeah.
And was probably related to funding of some sort, given that it was basically Channel 4 that part funded some of this, which I thought was quite interesting before Film 4 was a thing.
Yeah.
So...
And as it says on the cover of this Blu-ray, it won the Best Screenplay at Cannes Film Festival in 1982.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And so, I don't know if you know, did you notice in the opening credits a very early work from Hans Zimmer? Hans Zimmer did the...
So apparently it's the first... It's his first credit, I believe. So I didn't know that. I actually went to IMDb's trivia section just to see what there was about the film, and that was Hans Zimmer's first music credit, did the electronic music. There's a couple of other things that are interesting about this from that. So apparently at the time when he was making this, Jarmusch was getting his own house renovated in Kensington, and he cast a lot of the builders that were working at his house in the film to be the builders, which I thought was very amusing. And the fact that the neighbour's dog is actually Jeremy Irons' dog.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah.
So it shows how all that put together. But I agree with you. It's such a quirky, interesting, like in its own right, very entertaining, but actually has a lot to say, I think, around the sides, and contrasting what a lot of Britons would assume is a lesser developed country in Poland, and all of their problems for the posters and all that were getting put up, and actually not looking close to home and saying, oh, okay, not all that different as the case may be.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's still very timely in terms of those themes of how we look at people from other countries and how we look at workers in different kind of class structures, and I think there's a lot that this film is saying about today,
while also having fun with the fact that the British or English can be a bit stiff upper lip and not take on problems head on sometimes, and kind of skirt around the issue, you know, like I think that's where a lot of the humour actually comes from in it as well. I think you know, it's even like a very minor touch up like Monty Python about it at times. Like you know, you just get a feel of that, especially in the supermarket manager. He's very I could see that nearly being a Monty Python sketch or something of that effect.
Yeah, definitely.
So cool. So if you're in, well, this might be worldwide, but certainly in the UK, it is streaming for free in Freevee on Amazon, which I thought was pretty fantastic. Oh. Which does give you, when you go on the Freevee, you realise how many great films are actually on Freevee. If you don't mind watching the odd ad stuck in the middle, 20-cent ad in the middle, you'll get a pretty good film to watch, and one that I heartily recommend. And Elliot says it's 5 stars. I don't do star ratings, but it's very, very, very good. So
that sounds like a 5-star to me.
I mean, it could be. But see, one of the reasons I stopped rating stars, because if I really liked something, I was like, I'll just skip 5 stars. Like it's sort of marking out the fact that I really enjoyed something, rather than it being some sort of, you know, people compare one 5-star against another one. And I'm like, I don't know.
No,
watch it. That's what I'm saying is go watch it. You know, that's good, and a lovely left field choice. The Blu-ray itself, does it have anything on it?
All it's got is an interview with the editor, Barry Vince. It's quite a lengthy interview, and he does talk about his history in filmmaking, but also the making of the film and what he can remember from it. Yeah. I just hope.
See, when you first.
No, go on. Sorry, I'll let you go first.
Go for it. I was going to say, when you first showed me it, I was like, Bruce Willis and Sybil Shepherd? I didn't really think that was... I don't have to watch a whole TV series to watch this.
Yeah. No, I think... yeah, I just hope that this does get more attention someday. I think perhaps because the director is back in conversation with, his recent film, and then some of his older films have got a release from BFI.
BFI, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it seems likely that if anybody's going to do a reappraisal of this and give it a deluxe edition, it'll probably be BFI, but I also could see it kind of in Radiance or something as well. It definitely fits that brand of, here's a film with lots to say, that we could say lots about, and that is also very entertaining, that not enough people have seen. Job done, well done, Elliot. That's another one ticked off the list, and I can go and watch Deep End now from on the shelf, which I hear is just fabulous.
Yeah, Deep End is very good.
Excellent, and then I can watch the Ducky film afterwards. So that's our episode for today. We have coming up next. The film that has been talked about, if anybody wants to watch it and prepare ahead of time, is Goodbye Dragon Inn. Those of you that know people who might like that movie might be able to guess who is going to be on the next episode, but I'll not reveal that until we do the episode itself. Indeed. If anybody wants to find you, Elliot, in case they don't know where you are, where would they find you?
You can find me on YouTube at Boutique Blu-rays with Elliot Coen. Or you can find me on Instagram at Elliot Coen Films.
There you go. And yes, lots of temptation. If you don't mind being tempted on a daily basis on Instagram, on a nearly as regularly basis on YouTube, go follow Elliot. It's they're always not good for the wallet, but good for the soul.
Yes,
I think it's good to say. Lots of pictures of like that stack you had of your Kino 4Ks, and the one just kind of sitting on its side. I was like, you would just look up at that at night and go, all's right in the world.
Yeah, it does bring me some kind of joy seeing that.
Yeah, but we're all similar in some ways. You can find me on my own channel at Chris Moen on YouTube. If you're listening to this on Spotify, if you want to listen to the podcast rather than watch it, you can certainly catch us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or all of those general other places. And until next time, we'll catch you then.